welcome to Inside Minneapolis. I'm Phill Lindsay. We're standing here at the Grain Belt Brewery in Northeast Minneapolis, and in this edition we're going to be talking about the commercial and industrial background of this part of Minneapolis. Meet us inside. What we just saw were a few images from the Northeast Gateway up at Central and Broadway. Artist Susan Feeney did a wonderful job. She went and talked to dozens of people in different ethnic communities and gathered some particular images from their culture. So it was nice to see that. Part of the art scene that's actually burgeoning here in Northeast Minneapolis. Now, with me is a woman that actually I'm kind of envious of, because she's done something that I would have liked to have done, and that's write a wonderful book about a particular part of Minneapolis. Genny Zak Kieley has written a book called Heart and Hard Work. Jenny, it's a pleasure to have you here on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you surprised by the success of this book?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've been telling me some stories about how people lined up out the door at Kramarczuk's for your first book signing. When you wrote it, did you have any anticipation that people would be so excited?
No. I thought, that I'd have to be going door to door.
Yeah, selling the books.
And obviously my family would buy it.
Yeah.
But I thought maybe 100, 200,
Yeah, but on that first book signing, you had hundreds of people show up.
Yeah.
And now
it was it had only been out for about a week or so.
That's incredible. Now, how have people heard about it?
Well, there was a big article in the Star Tribune.
And that helps.
And and then there was an interview done on Channel 2. And it was right before Christmas, so I couldn't figure out really how they were going to work it into Christmas.
Yeah.
But they kind of used it as a kind of memory type of thing. People tend to be thinking about memories right around Christmas.
And everybody says, hey, this would make a great Christmas gift,
yes.
a holiday thing to give to aunt and uncle. Well, I think you said, too, when people were waiting in line to grab that book, your husband or somebody was drafted to go through the line and kind of keep some order, and people started looking at the book saying, I don't want just one of these, I want about 8 copies of this. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And you've had contact from around the country and...
I've gotten a lot of letters from, I was counting states for a while, and I think we came up with something like 15 in the very beginning, and I think Okinawa and a couple foreign countries.
Are these mostly people that lived Northeast?
That used to live Northeast, yeah. And the people that have transplanted into other places are even more excited about the book because they don't live here anymore, and it's about their past.
Did you grow up in Northeast? Okay. What's your family background? Where did you live in Northeast?
I lived on 27th and California Street.
Okay.
And I moved there when I was about 6 years old. And there was the little neighborhood stores that I was real shy when we first came here, and some of my first friends were the people that owned the stores. And
you told me at one point you were going to do some short pieces on some of the neighborhood businesses, and that's kind of how you got started writing some stuff?
I had written just some little vignettes about Joe and Bessie and Steve Wasik, who were the neighborhood, kind of the mom and pop stores that were in the neighborhood, and they'd give me free popsicles and things like that in the summer, and just treated me like I was one of their kids or something. Nice. When I'd go in there, and I had written about these people, and some of the people from my writers group said, "Oh, you've got to write more about Joe and Bessie, and about Steve Wasik," and that's how it kind of all began. And
it just snowballed from there. How long did it take you to write this and research it?
It took about 5 years.
Wow, that's a labor of love.
Yeah. Well, there was some scary points because I had no idea what was on the other side. I really thought it became a quest for myself. I wanted to write this book for my own family and for my own information, and I didn't care if no one was going to read it. I was going to write it anyways.
So it was
but
Genny, first of all.
Yeah.
You were your own audience.
I did quit my job, though, in 1993.
In the midst of this?
Yeah, because I thought, well, I'm going to write a book.
Well, good for you. No, your husband said, well, that's fine, just knock off from work.
Oh, yeah, he don't care.
He didn't care about that. Now, has he been surprised by the success of this?
Yeah. And it was fun for him, too, because he took some of my pictures for me, and I had a professional photographer take some of the pictures, and then also I got some from the Historical Society.
Yeah, there are a lot of wonderful historical
and they're very,
pictures.
They're more expensive. Well, he was using the one camera, and then my son broke the camera when he was in Europe, and so he took some of those pictures with one of those little cardboard throwaway cameras. And they turned out so nice.
Well, that's pretty good.
And he got recognition for these pictures.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was all excited. It was the first time in my life, I think, where we really shared something together, and he was just as excited as I was.
Well, that's a nice family project then. That's really good. Your family was up on 27th in California. As you were writing this, did anything surprise you, things that you didn't know about other corners of the neighborhood, anything that came up and said, I had no idea?
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of those. Because when you're a kid, you're kind of just aware of your own little corner.
Yeah, the immediate vicinity.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I didn't even know that there was Italians in Northeast and other ethnic groups because there were so many Polish around by us.
And that was your milieu, the Polish.
Yeah, and there was a few Russian and Slovak with us, but when I was growing up, I thought the whole world was Polish.
Yeah. Well, sure, because that was your world at the time. And as we're talking, I think we're going to bring up on the screen some addresses of businesses that existed over the last, say, 100 years along Central Avenue. And so I think some photos and some images of that, because Central Avenue also was a very important street, a commercial street in the development of Northeast, as were others like Johnson and Stinson and things like that. So you have had success with the book, and when you and I talked earlier, you said that there were a handful of things that you thought maybe made the book really successful. The first thing you said was sort of the name dropping, all of the people that the readers could get into. What did you mean by that in terms of name dropping?
Well, one lady I remember that worked at the library said that they used my book at their family reunion. And I said, and then she said, she was mentioning all these names of people that they knew. And I didn't plan to really name drop. It just, if it just came up with some of the information that there were names were part of the history.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that people would be so excited to have somebody that they knew or some of their relatives in the book. And I mean, certainly I can understand it now. I mean, if my family was in a book, I'd buy it.
Sure. Sure, even if it was just
and
a name
show it
on
around.
The block. That guy.
And then people would say, they'd bring up something from the book, which, sometimes I didn't even remember, and I'd say, well, are you sure that's in there? And
says the author.
Well, I think sometimes they were bringing in some of their own memories and mixing them with different things. And then also I interviewed different people, so these people that I interviewed would bring up names too.
Yeah.
So I didn't always know if someone said, oh yeah, such and such in the book. I didn't always know if it really was or not, because there was a lot of information in that book.
Well, and you mentioned the pictures. That's something that people can really connect with. Every picture is so evocative. People go, oh my word, I remember that store or that neighborhood or whatever.
There was a couple pictures that I remember. One was Blackie's Bakery.
Oh, sure.
And it was the horse and the wagon delivering the baker, the bread. And I wanted that picture, and I hounded them.
Yeah. Oh, from the actual
from the
bakery itself.
Yeah. The guy.
And they're an institution in Northeast.
Yeah. And I didn't give up on these people until they gave me these pictures.
So you were hounding these poor folks.
Yeah.
You said one fellow even had kind of an emotional response at one point. One guy was actually so connected to what he read. You said he raised a few tears and.
Oh, so many people called me and said, you just made my grandmother's Christmas, or you made my dad cry. And one lady even said to me, thank you for helping me to get to know my mother. I never knew my mother before. There were certain things about traditions and about the culture that she didn't understand until after she read my book. And it's hard to believe.
Yeah.
But it was an emotional thing for a lot of people.
You bet. We've got just a couple moments to go here, but I know you're working on another book. Now, would it be fair to call that a sequel? I mean, it's coming from what you've done?
It's a continuation of the first book.
Yeah,
So.
and why? I mean, you just get so many phone calls saying, hey, you missed...
Yeah, they'd say, well, you didn't get my church in there, or, you missed such and such. And, at first, there's no way you can get everything.
Yeah.
But then after I started hearing more and more things, I thought, well, gee, that's enough to make another book.
You bet. yeah, and you have a working title? Or maybe more than one?
Yes, yeah. Well, we're thinking of calling it Pride and Tradition. No.
And those are true elements, true qualities of, I think, the spirit of Northeast Minneapolis. Yeah.
But it's kind of hard to think of what picture would go with Pride and Tradition. See, the picture of the Genny Pickle factory has several meanings to me. On the other book, my mother worked at Genny Pickle.
Oh, okay.
And back around the same time period of what that picture was taken. She's not in the picture, but because of the title, Heart and Hard Work, my publisher wanted something that went with that title. So now
that was a place where people worked, and of course there's a family connection.
It's very much a connection, yeah.
Okay, and we should just mention quickly the name of your publisher.
Noden Press.
That's right. And at the end of this show, people have an opportunity to get some information about how to call a number and stuff like that. Well, Genny Zak Kieley, I want to thank you very much for just giving us a little outline about your book.
Well, thank you.
Wonderful to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Well, now stay tuned, because we're going to take a look at some of the wonderful religious architecture that I think typifies the community here in Northeast Minneapolis. And right before that, we're going to, right after that, we're going to have Don Riskin to talk about some of the industrial commercial activities that are going on today in Northeast Minneapolis. Stay tuned. You're watching Inside Minneapolis. Well, of course, people in Northeast Minneapolis are well aware of the wonderful religious architecture up here, but for those of our viewers that have not come up to Northeast Minneapolis, you owe it to yourselves. Come up here and just drive down along University Avenue or over by Logan Park. Any number of parts of the community have wonderful churches, and if it's possible, get inside because they're even more ornate in there. Now, my next guest, I'm very excited to have here, Don Risk. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
Now, this is a gentleman who I'm sure it's both a personal and a professional passion, and that has to do with the commercial and especially the industrial health and history of Northeast Minneapolis. You started a company, Risk and Associates, that deals in those areas.
My son did that, and when I left the MCDA, I then went to work for my son.
Well, it's nice to have a son that would do that.
Absolutely.
Create a business for yourself.
Yes.
But your personal and your professional history goes back a ways. You were an alderman for this ward up here.
That's right. I was an alderman from 61 to 68. And I resigned the city council. There were 2-year terms back then, we were called aldermen. Resigned the city council in 68 and became the director of what was the Minneapolis Industrial Development Commission. Our job, my role and the staff was to attract and retain business for the city. In 80, when Fraser became mayor, he wanted a one-stop operation. So he went to the legislature, got authorization to combine the Housing Redevelopment Authority with the MIDC, and he called it the MCDA. And in 80, I became a director of development under Jim Helzer. And my role continued to be that of retaining and attracting business to Minneapolis.
And you've gone on in that now in your private life as well.
That's right.
Now, your family, your origins are in Northeast. Where did you come from?
My mother and father came from Lebanon.
Okay.
I'm Lebanese. But I was born in Northeast Minneapolis, and I've lived there for the last 70 years, and I'll die here.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is the part of town that people keep those stakes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I got married, I had to buy a home in what's called Hoyer Heights. It was a new division in Minneapolis, just inside of Minneapolis, because those people who came here from Russia, from Poland, from Yugoslavia, from all the ethnic backgrounds, they stayed here. They were hardworking people. They lived in their homes. They maintained them. They weren't rich, but they were very stable.
And part of what made that stability happen was that there was work here to be had.
Absolutely.
What was here? What were some of the great industries and companies?
Well, understand that when we did a land use plan for the city of Minneapolis, 85% of the industry was, or the property zoned industrial was north of the loop. So you had what? You had Northrop King that was here. You had the Betty Crocker division of General Mills was on Central Avenue. Lumacraft, the boat maker, was on Central Avenue, across from General Mills. And then you had Champion Outboard Motors, which was here as well. And you had Northrop King that was here. You had the Grain Belt, and you had Gluek's Brewery, both of them going. I worked here at Grain Belt in the bottling house when I was going to college. And you had East Side Beverage, you had all kinds of industries that were here. That a lot of them, many of them have left. Medtronics.
Yeah,
Everybody
this is
knows
interesting. I was unaware of the fact that started in a small way right in Northeast.
Medtronic started in a garage on 19th Avenue Northeast. The gentleman who owned it was going up and down Central Avenue selling stock for $1 so that he could build a building.
Just neighbor to neighbor almost.
There you go.
That's a pretty impressive growth story.
Oh.
Because they've gone on, if they're not a Fortune 500, they're one of the largest companies
Yes,
going.
they are. Yes, they are. And they've maintained their roots in the community. As you know, they're going to be building their new facility right on 35 Central Avenue and 694 on what used to be an outdoor movie theater.
I had no idea about
Yes.
that. That's very exciting.
Yes.
One of the things we can do while we're talking is get a montage up on the screen of some of the industrial history of Northeast, so
Sure.
our viewers can see that while we're talking.
Sure.
I wanted to talk with you a little bit about some of the trends that you've seen in your experience, both professionally and as a resident up here. What's changing in Northeast?
Well,
what are some of the challenges?
What we have is some of the what we had left, for example, the Mid-City industrial area. We my staff and I work, we put the Bureau of Engraving and other companies in there. That is the Cosoto Avenue, the stuff along Plymouth Avenue, the stuff along the river, but there's very little land left for development. The only thing we have left for development is the redevelopment of existing sites that are, in most instances, polluted.
Okay,
But
so some cleanup needs to happen there, and then
yep.
come in with something new.
Right. But you see, what also is happening is people are forgetting the importance of business in industry. When you say industry today, they envision smokestacks and tumbleweed. And
yeah, the old heavy industry.
We don't have that. You know, when we talk about industry today, we're talking about good, clean plants that employ a lot of people, have good salaries for them, and maintain the stability of the community. So, but you know what we seem to be moving into is more housing. For example, along the river, we're getting rid of the industry in many instances and replacing it with housing. When Grain Belt Brewery, or I'm sorry, when Great Northern Depot was taken down and the railroad yards behind it, the railroad yards are now housing,
right.
not industry, they're housing.
Right.
We envision in the new plan for this area, housing along the
right
river.
along the east side here of the Mississippi.
There's been a moratorium on any development for industry along the river. Well, you know, one can understand the need for housing, but one also has to understand there's a need for job opportunities for people. And you've got to provide an opportunity. If you were to be given a house without a job, you couldn't afford it.
Do you think if the housing comes in without nearby work for people, that would change the character of a community like Northeast?
Absolutely. And let me give you an example. I told you about what happened where the industry was located in this part of the city. The southern part of the city is where those people who were professionals had lived. And you know, you had the lakes in Park Avenue and Portland Avenue, great streets.
Yeah, rather gracious parts of town.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Those people moved into Edina, they moved into Burnsville, they moved into Bloomington, and the people behind them who came in and filled in were people who were in need of jobs. They were not quite as professional, but there were no jobs in that area.
In their immediate vicinity,
That's
you're
right.
saying. So
I'm talking about the Phillips neighborhood and the Whittier neighborhood that are having very difficult times. But Northeast has remained stable because it had the job opportunities. But as those move away, I see that it can be a danger of the community softening.
Become more of a commuter base. People, it's still a nice place to live, but
Yes.
they're not going to live and work there if the jobs aren't inserted.
That could happen. But you know, what I see happening is, because of the stability of Northeast Minneapolis, we have a lot of artists who are moving into this
Yes.
area. A great number of them, and they like it for a number of reasons. One, it's a relatively safe community. Two, the access to all of their needs are here, whether it's the quarry, whether it's transportation, and their proximity to downtown is 5 to 7 minutes. So
Yeah.
they like it very, very much.
In essence, it's a new industry
Absolutely.
that's come up, although it's
Yes.
not one of those heavy industries
No,
as you were talking about. It's
no.
not a smokestack industry.
No, but you see, with those kind of people, it's they and maybe one or two others who are involved in
Right.
the artwork. Whereas you have a factory, you probably have 300 or 400 people working.
Yeah, pretty intensive on the labor,
Yes,
labor
yes,
front.
yes.
How have you seen Northeast grow? I mean, what are some of the good news here? Are there things that are happening that you're most excited about?
Oh,
you mentioned
boy.
the quarry.
The quarry
that seems
was-
to me it would have been a shot in the arm.
The quarry is. That quarry, you know, prior to that, those people who live northeast, if you want to do any real shopping, you had to go to the suburbs. Now they don't have to do that any longer. And you know, I think you're going to have somebody who's going to talk about that quarry, and they're going to tell you how successful it is compared to other stores that, for Target and the others that are in the area. And I'm not going to.
Oh, right, yes.
step
We'll
on
talk
their
about that
words.
in specific
Sure,
on that
but
site.
It's been because of the intense use and the density of the population in the area.
And actually compared to other shopping malls, it's doing very well
Exactly.
compared to some that aren't that far
Yes.
away.
And if you just look north across the street of 19th Avenue, you see where the old florists used to be.
Are you talking Rosackers?
Rosackers,
Yeah.
and I assisted them in getting their approvals. And the housing that's going on what was closed up green, their green.
Oh, their preparatory space
yes,
there, yeah.
that's all gone,
Yeah.
and they have magnificent.
And more residents coming in.
Oh God, it's
Don,
great.
we've got just a moment left, but I don't want to leave this interview without talking with someone who's been a lifelong resident here. Other than your business and the work, what's one of the favorite things for you to do here in Northeast? What do you like to go out and do when
Walk.
you and just walk?
Just walk. Walk around Columbia Park. I love it. And you'd be amazed how many people are walking around Columbia Park. And all you can do is say hi, and people respond with a hi, hello, how are you? With a big smile on their face.
That's
I
wonderful.
Love it.
Don Riss, thank you very much.
You bet.
Pleasure to talk about Northeast
You
with
bet.
you. Well, now in a moment we're going to talk with Melo Janski. She's with Northeast Neighborhood Park, and also with Jim White. We're going to talk specifically about the Quarry. But first we're going to ask you a question. Did you know? Stay tuned, you're watching Inside Minneapolis. Well, again, veterans of Northeast will know that where Gluek Park is today used to be the site of the Gluek Brewery. And of course, we are inside the Grain Belt Brewery. We're in what was the brew house. So again, a nice place to be inside Minneapolis. Now with me are two people who know an awful lot about a certain project and a certain part of Northeast Minneapolis. Melo Janski, it's nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Yes. And Jim White. Jim is a senior project coordinator at the Minneapolis Community Development Agency, a colleague of mine. And we're going to talk sort of about the Quarry, but the Quarry writ large in a way. I mean, this is a large project. Jim, how about a little background on the Quarry? For people who might be watching who don't know where it is and what went into creating what we call the Quarry?
Well, Phil, the Quarry project is located just north of 35W as it swings into Northeast from between Johnson Street and New Brighton Boulevard.
Okay.
It's about a 42-acre site south of 18th. It was the former home of the Knott Company, Edie's Ice Cream, the old pie terminal. So folks who have been around here for a while would recognize that area. It's bisected by Arthur Street Northeast.
Okay. So that's where it is, and this is a project from what I've heard, and we're going to get a chance to look at actually the groundbreaking a few years back, and I'll bet both of you were there. I think this was in, fall of '96? The groundbreaking, so if we get that clip up for our viewers, this is the point at which they actually knocked down one of those old buildings, and the balloons went up, and the firecrackers went off, and there was more confetti than I've ever seen, just blowing around. But this was not a project that happened quickly.
That's correct.
How far back did that go in the planning and the idea for the Quarry?
Well, the planning actually started in 1981. We thought of, the City Council directed the City Development Company, MCDA, to start looking around for a grocery store in Northeast because it was really underserved for grocery. They had an old country club grocery store on Central Ave, just north of Central and Lowry, and the owner at that time had decided he was going to expand that store, and that was going to be the grocery store, but then the owner died, and the grocery store's expansion never occurred.
So that deal just went off the table.
That's right, and so then the story got more complex because we kept doing studies and looking around for sites, and it was a built-up community, as you know, and stores at that period of time were changing in size. They went from about a 30,000-foot store to 50, 60, 70, and
just the nature of the
more.
business changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The business changed. The large boxes were taking over, and retailing was changing. We had 4 or 5 big retail chains here in the Twin Cities that were operating at that time, and now really the ones that are really expanding are down to just 2 or 3. So you're really limited to the big Cubs and Rainbows, and that's about it.
So you're talking about the better part of a generation, good 15 years, from the early 80s till when that groundbreaking happened, then of course a couple years of the actual development of it and that sort of thing. Now, Melo Janski, you are the contact person for the Northeast Park Neighborhood Organization.
That's
is that
right.
What does that mean, contact person?
Well, some people call themselves staff. I call myself contact.
Okay, so you're the person that people literally get in touch with.
Phone me, and
Right.
I take care of the mail and
Right,
that's
the
it.
business of the neighborhood group.
Right.
Can you describe the neighborhood? Now, this is the neighborhood that's immediately around what we're talking about, right near the quarry?
Well, the quarry is right with the neighborhood, you know.
Yeah.
The neighborhood
It's
starts.
inside.
Yeah, it starts on Central and 18th and goes east
Okay.
to Stinson Boulevard. And then we do take some of the businesses there, but we have never bothered with them because they have their own organization that, you know, so
Oh, sure.
But if
And-
they do have a problem, they will call us.
I bet they do. It's like, Melo, can you help me with
Yeah.
this? And then I think, am I right that on the eastern side of your neighborhood, there's actually some of the industrial
That's right, it's heavily industrial.
component as well?
We're the second smallest neighborhood in the complex of the city of Minneapolis. There are
Okay,
81
and-
neighborhoods and we are the smallest.
Now, do you mean smallest in terms of number of people? Or,
That's right,
So
that's
not
right.
geographic, because it's not particularly small on the map.
No, it's the amount of people in the neighborhood.
Wow.
And, but we're very active. We have a lot going on in that neighborhood simply because the industry has been there for many years, and the people, you know, years ago couldn't drive cars and things like that, so they built in that area so that they could go to work.
Yeah, Don Risk was just talking about the fact that it was more than convenient. It helped make the community stable. The fact that people could not only live there, but also go to work very close by.
But we never had a good shopping area.
Yeah.
And East Hennepin was torn down. That was about one of the closest. And Southeast was handicapped with no place to go, you know, to do their shopping, and so was Northeast. So between the two communities, that area has really blossomed up.
Yeah. Now, I've got to ask you a question that I think I know the answer, but I'm not sure. We call this new, very successful shopping center the Quarry, and it's on a large site that once upon a time had a quarry?
It was a quarry to begin with, yes, and
Okay.
they used to have those rock crushers and things like that. When I was a kid, I used to bike up there and watch them.
Right.
And there was water in there. People used to swim, but they weren't allowed to do it.
We're
but they
supposed to do it. But
Yeah, but they went in there, and there have been a couple of accidents.
Oh.
But through the years, the quarry, I suppose, has maybe outran its business or something. I don't
Yeah.
really know the background of that, except that it's very historical. You know, it's on a plat. We have about 5 or 6 springs underneath.
As the old business. Oh, I see. So there's water.
There's water,
Underneath there.
groundwater underneath. That's spring water.
Yeah.
And it's had a lot of history there.
Can you tell us briefly, because no project in Minneapolis proceeds without the involvement of at least the neighborhood
That's right.
that's adjoining it. Can you describe a little bit about what Northeast Park went through as people like Jim and other folks, the private sector, came in and said, let's make this work? What did you all do?
Well, we elected a chairperson, and she got in touch with all the neighborhoods, and we started to have our little meetings. And then she was unable to continue, so then we had Steve Pelagia come in from Wyndham Park, and he took over.
And that's the neighborhood immediately to the
That's
north.
Wyndham.
Yeah, of this area.
And so then we met about once every 2-3 weeks, and we just kept going and going and going, and it just kept getting bigger, and Jim would be there, and then Ryan Companies would be there, and then we would have the merchants come in, and we would talk, and we really wanted to design the building so that it was pleasant to the eye,
yeah.
and that's what we had.
As well as convenient to
Yeah,
do the actual
yeah.
shopping and things like that.
And so we've been watching the area. There's been a lot of traffic, and we're kind of dealing with that. And then the grocery carts, of course, but we're not the only.
Well, I know that's citywide. I mean, they're trying to take
But we
care
did
of that.
have a meeting last week, and we discussed a lot of this with the Rainbow people and the people from the other stores.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that they would get on it. And we want to ask, actually, we would like to have a corral to put the cart in. So
Yeah,
then when they
cart
do go
corral.
down and go to the bus stop, at least the cart would be up on the top of the hill.
Jim, I remember once you said that one of the things that made this a successful project was the involvement of the communities. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, Phil, I'd say that actually that's the key piece that was needed to make it work. The market area was large, all of Northeast and Southeast, so that's really the natural base to then get input from, because these are the folks who would shop there. So we went out and we got the entire neighborhood involved. And one of the things we had to do is we had to make sure everybody knew what was going on, so we used the city's cable offices. They came out, MTN, and they did a very nice job of cable visioning. Every month, the big meetings we had, and we had committee meetings during the weeks, And then we would present information and people would get up and identify themselves. And so people could then turn on their television set the next week and see. And they ran it during prime time 3 times a week until we had the next set of meetings. So people could see what was going on and the progress being made. And that was a big, big part of
Good
this.
communication, good involvement.
Yeah.
How many neighborhoods ultimately got involved? I mean, it was more than just a couple.
We invited the entire Northeast neighborhoods,
Yeah.
all the Northeast, because we knew that they would be shopping there.
Yeah.
And if not, at least they would have knowledge of what was going to be there.
Sure, and that would be important.
13 of them, actually.
13
Yeah.
different neighborhoods.
And 2 business groups
And
also.
business groups, and then of course, as you say, some of the stores and the commercial folks, as well as the developer.
It was really, actually, I kind of missed them because they were interesting.
Are you saying you're ready for the next big project here in
well,
Northeast Park?
we're working on it.
Good for you. That's the attitude, isn't it? That's exactly right.
We have the nursing home that we're talking about, and that has been kind of, Jim and I were speaking of this earlier, and it's been kind of had a few snags.
Yeah, well, these are never easy, these kinds of projects. I mean, there are always issues, whether they're physical or community concerns.
And then we also are talking about the enlargement of the park or trying to redo it or something like that.
Yeah.
And so we're having meetings on that. So it's important. Everything we're doing is important.
Jim, as a development specialist, I want to ask you a little bit about the actual success of the quarry as a project. There was some pollution that had to be cleaned up. Am I right in recalling that there was some award on the cleanup as well, and then the business that's just been booming in these particular commercial enterprises?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's won a number of awards, and it won last year. It received the Phoenix Award, which is a Pennsylvania Society of Professional Engineers has an award. It's a national award, and it received the top award for the top cleanup project in the United States, top brownfield cleanup project. It won an engineering award last week, a national engineering award last week because of the efforts it took to mitigate the air, soil, and ground pollution. We have underground methane venting system in there, and various types of methods were used, including dynamic compaction to seal the site and cap it over, and we removed a lot of soil and so on. And then it's also been very successful. It's Rainbow's top store in the Twin Cities. It's all the stores are at or near the top of their category for their chains throughout the metro area, and it's got over 2,000 people working there, and we estimate
right on site, 2,000 people.
Yeah. 2,000 different individuals get their paychecks there.
That's impressive. That kind of outnumbers the actual residents nearby.
That's
if
right.
2,000 people working there.
But Rainbow told us last week that they've increased their sales by 150,000 people.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
I've got to ask a question. Maybe it's kind of a hard question, but great success here at the quarry. What's the impact been over on Central Avenue with some of the businesses over there?
Well, Central Avenue has their own thing going. You know,
Yeah.
it's going to be the renovation of Central. It'll be on a different type of scale.
Sure.
And I haven't been too updated on it yet, but because it's slow. You know, these processes are real slow. But they won't have grocery stores, anything like this, unless they have small.
So it'll be more complementary to what's going on at
Be
the
more
quarry?
ethnic type of.
Okay, smaller
features.
scale and that.
And which they already are doing.
Okay.
You know. But Central, they're talking about widening it and redoing the lights and putting more shrubbery and things like that.
Well, Melo, I want to thank you for sharing a little bit about the process in putting the quarry project together from the neighborhood's point of view. Jim, thank you as well for being here with your facts and your figures. Good project. Now, in a moment, we're going to interview a couple more folks. We're going to have Ed Matthes on from Marino's Restaurant and Deli, and Jennifer Young, who's involved with a couple of buildings that include some of the creative folks that have been moving into Northeast Minneapolis. But first, here we are at the Grain Belt Brewery, and we're going to get a word of welcome from one of our hosts who helps manage this facility. Stay tuned. You're watching Inside Minneapolis.
My name is Kelly Hartman. We are at the Grain Belt Brew House right now, which is host to several television commercials, music videos, and a major motion picture. We are currently rehabbing the Grain Belt Bottle House, another portion of the Grain Belt complex. When we have already done the Grain Belt Warehouse, and it is now housing approximately 24 artist quarters, studio space, and the Bottle House will be hosting approximately 30 studios in Northeast Minneapolis, and we hope to someday rehab the building we're in right now.
Well, thank you, Kelly. It's nice to be here at the Grain Belt Brewery, of course, a classic landmark here in Northeast Minneapolis. A little chilly until we get it developed, but I think it's going to be the last piece that needs to be developed here in this property. My next guests are very involved with part of the heart and soul of Northeast Minneapolis. I want to welcome Ed Matthes, who's with the Marino's restaurant empire. We've got a restaurant and a deli in Northeast. Right. And Jennifer Young, pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much. And you have a very successful building on California Street known as the California Building. And what's gathering some interest, I think, on the part of other folks is that you've recently taken, ownership of another property on East Hennepin at 4th, the old Oddfellows Hall. Let's talk about that in a moment. The California Building, Jennifer, big building, kind of a classic building that had been in Northeast for years. What had it been before you got involved with it?
In its original life, back in 1920, it was built as a grain mill. And but it had a fairly short-lived life as a grain mill, from the best we can determine, maybe 10, 15, 20 years.
Okay.
And then it had become Franklin Manufacturing, which was a company that engineered appliances and things like that. It was mainly an engineering facility.
Okay.
And
so kind of light industry in a way.
Light industry, and they were there into the 60s.
Okay. Then there must have been a little period in there where it was kind of come see, come saw. And
yeah, there was some different people who leased. I've been told that Graco actually leased there for a while, some office space.
Another venerable Northeast industry.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's part of the vernacular up here.
It is.
And then you got involved, as I recall, on a management basis.
That's correct.
Late 80s?
In the 80s,
yeah.
And then my partner, John Kramer, and I bought the building in 1991.
And here's where I first met you, and you bought the building, and it's a significant building. Describe the building. It's what, 3?
It's 6 stories.
6 stories tall.
90,000 square feet.
Yeah.
There's about 70 spaces.
Yeah.
And primarily we rent space to artists.
Right, and that's what intrigued me. Of course, I work in the arts myself professionally, and the fact that you had that many creative folks in there doing everything. I remember from piano tuning, and I think there was costume and fabric manufacturing when I first came in. There, just describe some of the kinds of folks that are in there.
We still have a piano tuner.
Okay.
Lots of painters. We have some theater people, ceramic people, woodworker, a fellow that makes hand-carved wood chairs.
Wow. And it's in demand enough that you have a waiting list.
That's correct.
Yeah, so very successful.
Very successful.
Right. Was it the success of the California building that sort of allowed you and your partner John Kramer to think about, well, maybe there's a demand, maybe there's a need to do another building?
I think absolutely. The building had a waiting list for a couple, I'm going to say 3 years, so fairly steady rental at the California building. And because it was so steady, we didn't have as much to do with our time.
So nice problem to have, huh?
We thought, well, I think we can do this again. And so we started looking and had our eyes open for several years and hadn't found anything. But then we drove by the Oddfellows building and it was for sale, and we looked at it and we fell in love with it because it was so old. Yeah. And that was the other attraction. We were looking for an old building again.
Okay, so you had a kind of a building in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I recall from just a casual comment that the two of you were making, is that one of your tenants at California building does body work, shiatsu or something?
That's correct.
And I believe, Ed, you're familiar with that person. Sure. That's right.
Well, yeah, the Minneapolis School of Massage, that's actually located on Lowry, have expanded to her building. Is what ended up
So another
happening.
Success story here.
Absolutely.
Their business is growing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But now, when I was telling people that we were going to have somebody on representing the Marino food establishment, people got excited. In fact, I think one of the crew said, "Oh, are they doing the lunch here for the taping?" I can't mention Marino's to people without their eyes getting large and say, "Oh, what a great place!" And you have both a restaurant on 22nd and Central, but also a deli.
Yep, my brother runs the deli on 22nd and Johnson Street. My brother Ralph. There again, that was the history of that goes that originally my uncles started it. My grandma started down actually near the area you were looking, down at Malark's on East Hennepin, and that restaurant went under. And my uncles ended up buying her a place on 22nd and Central to get going and that kind of thing. And my dad was in the service, and we were in California at the time, and he was just getting ready to retire, and my uncles offered him the business. Well, we had a big family, and we all came out, and he bought the business from my uncles, and my brothers and I, we all worked in there with my grandma and my parents, and have been there. Well, we just celebrated our 30th anniversary.
Wow.
And we opened the deli in '85. My brother Ralph had an opportunity to get that building. I guess it must have been in the mid-'70s that he bought the building there, and yeah, about 75 or 6, I think. And there had always been little corner grocery stores in there, and we kind of figured, well, if ever he loses a tenant, there was a co-op in there for a while as well, a food co-op that was in there for a
I think I remember the
short time.
building, yeah.
Yeah. And we felt that if ever a tenant left or anything like that, and that's what we would do, is we would just kind of expand in that direction.
So not unlike Jennifer, you had an idea and you waited for the opportunity there.
Right, exactly.
The brother knew, oh yeah, if that ever opened up, we'd do that.
And so then basically using the restaurant, we were able to get the deli going. And at this point now, we're 2 separate operations, yet we worked intertwined quite a bit. A lot of the products, we trade off products, and we work together on projects. We do a lot of joint advertising. If, for instance, I had somebody call me up for a big order of, we both do a lot of catering, of like boxed lunches. Well, that's his specialty. And so I'll give a call over, or I'll refer them to him. And the same is true vice versa. I may feed more bulk products where I'll take and feed 100 or 200 people in mass quantities as opposed to individual portions.
Sure.
And
so those calls come your way.
And so we work together in those ways, and we're able to serve the community a lot more in that sense. I think one of the biggest things that's helped us with the longevity has actually been being part of the community, getting involved in the school functions, getting involved in the community functions that are going on. We grew up there, and we were always involved as it went anyway, and connected in that sense. And I think that unlike a lot of other areas, a lot of times I think the philosophy is that business comes in and kind of, rapes the community and takes off. And I think in
takes the money out.
Exactly. And I think in a lot of cases, I'm seeing kind of a renaissance in Northeast right now, but I think in a lot of cases, Northeast went the opposite direction. I mean, even since I bought the business from my parents, there are probably only about 4 retail places on Central Avenue, for instance, that were there when I bought it maybe 11 years ago. Wow. And the rest are all new or service oriented. Right. So we're marketing actually even further out, into some of the industries and things like that are out in Northeast to try and get people to come
Well, I don't want to miss the one question. Your family, prior to the restaurants themselves, it was part of Northeast.
Oh, yeah.
Goes back to...
My grandma's worked in a number of restaurants downtown. They've lived down in the old Italian neighborhood down off of Beltrami.
Yeah.
My grandma's been there in her house probably for about 50 years now, I think. And she only lived like 2 blocks away before that,
Right. Big move.
Yeah. And I still go down there just about 2 or 3 times a week, and visit the old neighborhood and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And
okay, from what we're hearing from Ed, this is a business that they've been involved in with roots that go back. Are your roots in Northeast, or what was it about Northeast that you and your partner said, this is a good place to do this? We want to try this up here. What attracted you to Northeast?
I think I'm not from Northeast. I actually grew up in South Minneapolis. And what attracted us to it were some of the natural amenities that the area had, such as the river and the wide open spaces. And the California building itself happens to be near a lot of green space. It has its own lawn. It didn't have gardens, but it had potential for gardens. And these are all things that we saw as being adding potential to our new development. And then and the Oddfellows building, for instance, is quite close to the Stone Arch Bridge in that development. So again, the river comes into play. And then I think secondarily, the buildings themselves had natural amenities that also attracted us. High ceilings, large windows.
And again, a lot of the folks that are interested in the kind of space that you're developing, they're artists and creative people. And that's a trend that's really picked up steam in the last, 4 or 5 years. Your building, I know in California in the past, has been, will it be this year, part of the Art-a-Whirl
Yes.
tour?
Absolutely.
And for folks who are watching inside Minneapolis who aren't aware of Art-a-Whirl. It's this amazing art crawl. I'm sure you're aware of this. Could you just briefly describe what it is? And I know it's happening in the month of May.
It is. It's happening the weekend of the 21st.
Yep, 21, 2, and 3.
21, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And it's a weekend-long arts studio tour where artists in different buildings open up their studios for people to come through and see what they've been doing, art that they've made, things are for sale.
Right.
There's music events, there's going to be film events this year,
Yeah.
there's children's events.
And it's more than a dozen buildings, as I recall.
It's northeast wide.
Yeah, so it's the whole quadrant of the city.
That's right.
And I think the last time I went on the so-called crawl, I mean, there were literally hundreds of creative folks, artists of different types, opening up their spaces and showing people.
Absolutely, and I would say every year that number has grown.
Yeah. Well, I think Northeast has been discovered by artists.
Yeah.
Compared to your family, certainly.
Well, and that's part of the community thing as well. I mean, you know, the craft shows and the art shows. I mean, you can go through Northeast almost every weekend and you'll see some kind of small, whether it be at a park or at a little hub somewhere. There's those craft shows and that type of thing as well. So I think that's kind of a part of Northeast, and I think what you were talking about with the buildings and those types of things, I mean, you look at the way some of the buildings look, and you couldn't build buildings like that now almost. I mean, they're just, it's phenomenal.
So what you're saying, this is a nice way to help maintain the heritage.
Oh, for
and
sure.
to leave the legacy of an earlier generation, a couple of earlier generations, and leave it behind with another generation there. What are your plans for the Oddfellows Hall? Anything you can share with us? More of what you did in the California, or a different position?
The general idea is that we would create office and or studio space in the upper floors of the building. It's a 3-story building, so that leaves 2 floors for that, and then the first floor and basement will be retail space of some kind.
And at what stage are you now in the, I mean, here we are in the spring of '99.
Right.
At what stage are you? What's your estimated time of arrival?
Well, we actually have the first tenant moving into the 2nd floor next month.
Oh, my word.
So I'm working on some deadlines right now, getting some space ready for, it's an office space, and they're an intranet company doing all sorts of
Well, and this gets back to an
things.
earlier conversation we had in the show about the fact that the old heavy industry of Northeast is in some ways giving way to different types of industry. And here you're talking about the great cyber industry, and of course the artists as an industry as well. Well, we have just a moment left. I always like to ask someone who has his roots in the community, what's one of your favorite things about Northeast other than Marino's restaurant? What do you love to do up here when you get some time?
Actually, I think I actually just like walking around, looking at some of the old things, going to places I used to go. A lot of those places are still intact, you know, the places I went as a kid and things that I did as a kid. I was down at Logan playing softball with a bunch of guys yesterday. You know,
so
and
it's the old community is still there.
Exactly.
Right. Well, Ed, I want to thank you very much for sharing just a few thoughts about your family's business and what it's been like to be part of Northeast. Jennifer, congratulations and good luck with the Oddfellows project and the California. Well, we'll be back in a minute, but first let's get a few wrong answers to our monthly question of what the heck is that? Stay tuned, you're watching Inside Minneapolis.
Well, it looks like an upside-down goalpost for like football.
It's a football post.
Yeah, well, it looks like either a soccer or a little kid football stadium.
Is that a dog park? That looks like runway 242.
It looks like a pee-wee football field for little kids, little touchdown poles.
It's an old goalpost. It's now being used as an overgrown jungle gym.
That's an alien landing field. It happens every day here.
I have no clue.
I work in the Minneapolis School District, so that looks like giant H's.
Well, now let's go out and get the right answer from a guy named Trevor, who happens to be from Rugby, England.
Thanks, Phil. My name's Trevor, and as you may detect from the accent, I'm not from around these parts, I am from England. And what you see in front of you isn't an alien landing pad, it's not a dog field, it is in fact a rugby pitch, and a fine rugby pitch. We're actually in the process of resodding or returfing the field as we speak. With our own fair hands, we're going to put together a very fine playing surface. It is and will be one of the finest fields in the area, and we're making sure that it is ready for the Minnesota Sevens tournament hosted by Metropolis Rugby Club here at Columbia Park. That's to the northeast of Minneapolis. As I say, June the 12th is the day of the venue, and why not come up? It will be a great day. We're expecting sunshine. It's good company. The setting is fantastic, and as I say, you can't go wrong. The field itself is going to be immaculate.
Well, that's it for this edition of Inside Minneapolis. Hope you enjoyed the show. Next month, we're going to take a look at the Hiawatha corridor in South Minneapolis, especially some of the housing and transportation issues around there. Now, at the end of the show, we have our catalog of useful information and resources, so grab your pencils and take a few notes. Alongside that catalog, a wonderful little documentary about some of the presidential street names that you'll see in Northeast Minneapolis. And alongside the credits, a wonderful picture of some young kids at Logan Park blowing bubbles in a fountain about 1910 or 1915. I'm Phill Lindsay. Thanks for watching Inside Minneapolis.
Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe.
Quincy?
Jackson, Van Buren, Tyler.
The Stinson one?
Polk, Taylor, Fillmore, Pierce.
Buchanan.
Lincoln.
Wasn't there a president named Johnson?
Ulysses, Garfield.
Arthur, Cleveland, and Benjamin.
Kinley, Roosevelt.
Taft.
Wilson, Harding, Coolidge, Hoover, and Delano.